The Trek Geeks Podcast Network is proud to have Fansets as its presenting sponsor. Fansets is the place for amazing pin collectibles with over 400 officially licensed Star Trek pins and new releases every month.
Keep listening for a special discount code good on your next order at fansets.com, just for Discovering Trek listeners. Fansets. Our pins have character.
Martok, monsters, and exposed navels required. Lower Decks Episode 2 has our beloved crew all dealing with various adventures, whether it's Martok leading them on a game board quest, Boimler running for his life, or Mariner orbital skydiving. Let's head into the turbo lift and press that down button, folks. My name is Dan Davidson, and we are Discovering Trek Lower Decks. Thanks so much for joining us, and welcome to Discovering Trek, the Star Trek Universe Companion, presented by Fansets. Episode 2, The Least Dangerous Game, gave us another wonderful surprise voiceover of a beloved DS9 character, some friction between an upper and lower decker, and Boimler, as always, screaming at the top of his lungs as he literally becomes someone's prey. As always, we have lots to talk about, so let me introduce you to my esteemed crew. Rank doesn't mean anything here with this group. We are all considered the lowest of the low of Lower Decks on the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. It's so low, I can't even read it very well. So Bill is still suffering from Vegas con crud, but he does send his best, and he looks forward to being back to join the discussions very soon. So that just means more mellifluous tones from the beautiful human beings known as Sara and Kasey. Kasey, good to see you again, man. How are you?
Hey, great to see you too. Lovely to be here as usual.
It always is great. And Sara, you know, your smile just lightens up the room, my dear.
This is the best day ever. Yay. Good to see you.
It's great to see you both. It's always fun to talk Lower Decks. And, you know, I got to say, I'm very excited so far what the season's brought in. Episode 2, a lot of things going on. We're going to get right into it. I can't wait to start this discussion. But before we do start talking about this week's episode, Sara, why don't you tell our listeners how they can get in touch with us to give us their thoughts on The Least Dangerous Game?
Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
Oh, you want me to tell them some stuff? You want me
tell
to
them some stuff.
You want me to talk? I can talk.
Talk it up.
I got some stuff for the listeners. We definitely want to hear from you and what you thought about this week's episode of Lower Decks. And the best way to do that is to get yourself the Trek Geeks mobile app. There's an app for that with your iOS or Android device. Download it and tap the More button for a whole bunch of ways to get in touch with us. And while you're at it, you can check out our brand new app exclusive shows that you won't be able to get anywhere else. Just head to trekgeeks.com/app to get the deets. Plus, you can also join the most positive Star Trek Facebook group there is. It's Camp Kittimer, and it's the official Facebook group of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network, and it's real easy to join. Just head on over to Facebook, search for Camp Kittimer, answer a few quick questions, and we'll let you right in to take part in on all the fun and, most importantly, positive discussion. Like Dan, it's just that simple.
Oh, that's getting old.
And yeah, it is. But it's an oldie but a goodie.
But it's also true.
It's true. And a big thank you to our wonderful admins, Haley, Jackie, and Fark for the amazing job they do running the camp. Please remember that any comments or messages you leave us in any of these places may be used against you in a future episode. Go for it, Dan.
Thank you very much, Sara. Now, I got to say, before we start our discussion...
Blank alert. Blank alert.
We want to warn our listeners that this episode of Discovering Trek Lower Decks contains spoilers. So if you haven't watched Episode 2 of Star Trek Lower Decks Season 3, stop listening this very moment. Head on over to Paramount Plus or wherever you pirate Lower Decks from. Watch the episode, then head on over back to Discovering Trek. Failure to do that will put you at risk to find out plot developments and character details for The Least Dangerous Game. Okay, I'm going to say it right now, guys. I'm going to start off.
Do it.
I didn't love this episode. I
agree.
didn't dislike. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I thought there were a lot of things that were just kind of yawn-ish for me, and we'll get into more details. But what about you, Sarah? You just said that you were kind of the same. Is that correct?
Yeah. It was fine.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It was
fine.
not TNG Shades of Grey, but it certainly wasn't
Yeah, I'm happy to
like
talk
that.
about it, but I won't be so overexcited that my lisp comes out and I trip over my words. You know?
Okay.
Let's be real.
Well, I would just blame that on the day drinking, but that's just me. Kasey, what about you? What did you think about it?
Yeah, it was an episode. So I just kind of go, all right, we had some fun, but yeah, it just kind of okay. Like you're saying, it's fine. It was okay. We get a little bit more character development in everyone. But I also found it interesting in that this felt very reminiscent of a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, the entire episode, where
that's very interesting.
Parts are great and parts are just, you've now walked 150 miles through the slog swamp. You turn around, you forgot your amulet, type of a thing. It was like, oh my God, really? Somebody roll a 16 to get us the hell out of here.
I really am kind of bummed out that Bill couldn't join us this week because I'd be very interested to see if he's in agreement with the three of us. We kind of, a lot of the time, we all seem to be right on the same page with everything, but I'll have to send him a message and maybe I'll throw a little quick blurb in on Patreon or something as to how he feels about it, because to be honest, I thought I was going to be the only one who thought it was just blah. So I'm kind of glad that we're all on the same page.
Maybe for our Patreons for episode 3, we can have a little discussion to catch up on what he thought on both episode 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Look at you writing out the outlines. I love it. I absolutely love it. Like I said, I'm not going to lie. It wasn't my favorite, but I will say one of my favorite parts of this whole episode, and it was my favorite part, was the return of another great iconic character voice. That, of course, being J.G. Hertzler portraying Chancellor or General, we're not really sure, Martok. I thought it was the high point of the episode. I thought it was great. He's got an iconic voice. It was great to see him return to this role in a different and very humorous way. You could tell that he enjoyed the lines he was doing, and I hope we get to see more of Martok as the season progresses, Sarah.
Absolutely. It was such a great opener for the episode. It got me excited because I had the original Klingon Encounter VHS board game in the 90s, and I believe it was Gowron was the Klingon. Was. Did you have this? Did you play it? Are you both familiar?
Did.
It was awesome. I wish I still had it.
One of the things I liked most about it is when they would roll the dice, Martok could see the dice that was rolled from his monitor, so it gave it a little extra added, adventure to the game. I thought it was really cool, Kasey.
Well, yeah. I mean, I want to know more about Sarah playing the game in the 90s.
Oh, that game. Oh, absolutely. Let's go back to that. Sarah, that game was awesome. It was state of the art back in the day.
It was. I think someone needs to re-release it in a modern format, because I mean, I do have a VCR hiding somewhere that if I get my hands on the game, I could still play it. I wouldn't really have anyone to play with, but it's still pretty rad.
Yeah.
I have to get Haley over for it. Yeah.
I loved how they talked about having a Gowron expansion pack in this game that they were playing on Lower Deck.
Yeah.
So let's get Bob O'Reilly in on this.
Well,
absolutely.
And that it's a Ferengi ripoff, voice alike. I was like, this is so perfect, because that just encapsulates a lot of the games where they're like, hey, we kind of got a couple of people, and everyone else you won't know really well who's going to be playing who in the game. But come on now. It was so D&D just throughout everything. I was just laughing. It's like, all right, let's do it.
I even loved at the end of the episode, as it was ending, how he was doing his voiceover work. He's like, Ferengi tax is not included. I just thought it was just fantastic how they just threw that little thing in there.
Yep.
It's another example that I think Mike McMahon has talked about this, guys, that he has such a love for Star Trek, and I think specifically for Deep Space Nine, that you can really tell whenever there's Deep Space Nine moments in any of these episodes of Lower Decks, they really stand out. This was a perfect example. And he's a geek just like we all are. I mean, we love Dungeons and Dragons. We love Star Trek. We love all these things. So to be able to put all of those different ingredients into one episode for us to enjoy. Even though I didn't love this episode, that aspect of the episode I really did love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mike McMahon is just, I really wish he had been at the creation event. I think I think a lot of the people who are involved in Lower Decks, we're getting some big names, some big comedy chops. I mean, people from SNL and people I've always loved that I'm just like, oh, can we do our whole own like Lower Decks convention? Like, cause I would be there for it in a heartbeat. Like even just to see Mike on stage, because he's living that fan dream. He's doing it, and he's able to utilize his experience to be like, okay, who do I love from TSSI that I'm going to sneak in here so I get to work with them and have my experience? It's awesome. It's fun to watch.
Right? Yeah. So at creation, what they had Tawny and Dawn on stage, I think it was only half an hour, and I was like, you guys are blowing it here. Those two ladies could easily crank out an hour of amazing stuff. Yep. Plus, and I was like, really. Lower Decks is bringing a lot of stuff in, and like you're saying, the obvious love for DS9 in there, just it permeates everything. And I don't know if for you two, but every time that comes up, it's just this other nice, gentle, warm blanket of comfort of like, oh yeah, there's other people like me who adore that show too.
I really wish I had seen them on stage because I didn't have a ticket for Thursday, and I don't know if it's scheduling on the actors and their part or scheduling on Creation's part, but the Lower Decks, I'm sorry, it's big, it's here, people love it, whether you like it or not, and it's no disrespect to any of the other people who are there doing their Rat Pack shows or their whatever, but there's room to be made for some of these people coming through, and let's give them that platform.
Yes.
Perfect example of that is for those people who were in Chicago, they had a Lower Decks panel. Now, of course, Chicago was the official Star Trek convention, and they had the Lower Decks panel, and they all dressed up like their characters. Yes. They all had, Jack had the purple hair. And,
love that.
And it's just amazing. They can get so much out of these panels with the actors because you can tell that they love doing the work just as much as we love watching it. And Kasey, you brought up one thing about, Deep Space Nine. And actually, I think it was Sarah who said, Mike loves this so much. So he brings it as much as he can, even when it's tiny, subtle things. Like one of the things that I also liked about this episode had nothing to do with the episode really was the spring ball scene. with Shax and Boimler. Just having that scene as quickly as it was, I instantly thought of Miles and Julian because that's what I think they're wanting to have happen is they bring in these little things that aren't fan service and aren't over the top just to make you think about the things that you love the most about these shows.
Absolutely. Now, quick question, just to take a quick left turn. Where in the timeline, this is post a couple of years after Voyager's back, correct? Or
I'm pretty sure it's after Nemesis. I'll have to double check, but I'm pretty sure that's when it is. So it's around that same. It's around that time period. It's after Voyager has returned, obviously, because Paris came back last season. But I want to say it's right after Nemesis. I'm going to do a quick check on that as we're having a discussion.
Yeah, because it makes me want to think of like any fun little characters that were children in TNG or something we could bring back later, like the imaginary friend girl from The Next Generation, or Molly O'Brien is an adult now and she's on the ship. Like, there's just like other cool throwbacks that you can probably do with the age difference. It'd be pretty fun.
So thanks to the power of the internet. Lower Decks takes place 1 year after Nemesis and 5 years before the earliest flashbacks of Star Trek Picard.
Okay.
So it's right after Nemesis. So it's right around that time frame that we expect. I mean, they all talk about they've been on Deep Space Nine and they've talked about, Picard and everything like that. So yeah. But I love how they're able to do those things on the show, like the spring ball scene. But I got to be honest, guys, there were parts of this episode that I really didn't care for.
Yeah.
One of them was, I think it was a missed opportunity. I thought Cranch was an interesting part of this episode, and he was kind of cool, but as we see with Boimler, he walked right into the problem, and he walked into it a little too easily. He's going to change the way he does things, but he walks right into it. Everybody can see that he's about to step on the rake, and it happens anyway. I thought it was funny how he got stabbed, and then all that Cranch wanted to do was take a selfie instead of kill him. I thought that was kind of funny, but I thought it was more of what I'd expect to see from Boimler, even though he made a point that this episode he was going to change the way he does things. Does that make sense?
Sure.
I don't know if it does or not. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, it does. Because he's all or nothing. And he's not listening to the people around him. I mean, Tendi really gives him some just very good friend advice of, well, yeah, no, now that you're just making another plan, but it's a plan at the opposite spectrum of what you were doing before. Maybe just be more in the moment. And that's part of where, when you are more concerned about the structure of what you're doing as opposed to what you're actually doing, you get caught in that structure, in that form. And that's where I see Boim's going on. I mean, think about it. In episode 1, he's oblivious to all the women that are throwing themselves at him at Ranch Raisin. And,
Ranch Raisin.
And then on here, it's, I just see it a little bit of his stubbornness of not listening. He hears people, but when you listen to people, it means you change your course of action. And he doesn't really do that. He hears certain things and manipulates it to fit what he kind of really wants to do anyways.
Right. Did you like the Cranch aspect of the episode, Sarah?
I was just laughing to myself because Kasey describing that about listening versus hearing. And I'm like, I listened to this episode. I mean, I heard this episode, but I didn't listen. Like, I couldn't stay that engaged by it, right? Like, there was a lot that I missed, but there was great one-liners. And the best one for me with Cranch was the whole, thanks for the mimosas. Like, just picturing him having breakfast mimosas with the captain. I was like, there's a scene I'd like to have seen too. Like, it was funny. I get that it was a play on the episode, The Most Dangerous Game. This is the least dangerous game. And it was what it was, but it was a take it or leave it storyline. And Boimler has, I don't know, he should be a little further along, I think.
Refresh my memory, and I'm sorry if I don't know the answer to this. I should. Was the alien that Cranch has that ever been depicted before, whether it's the old animated series or was it something else? And I don't know.
Maybe think almost of the bad guys in Galaxy Quest, because it had that kind of like...
We'll have to check with Aaron Harvey to see if it was in the animated series.
Yeah, I don't think
I don't know.
Was. But that's a good question for Aaron. Aaron will know instantly.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was one area of the episode that I was neither here nor there. It wasn't bad, but it was nothing that I was like, oh my God, I'm going to remember this for so many good reasons. But I got to say, I was disappointed, I guess is the best word, at the Ransom Mariner aspect of this episode. I don't want to beat a dead horse. I know we talked about it last week, but when is Mariner going to change her ways in a way that's going to benefit her? I really was. You wouldn't expect after what happened last week with her mom and then being put under Ransom's wing. Is this going to change her all? And it really didn't. She didn't listen to him. She broke the rules. It was really cool to have the 2009 flashback with the orbital skydiving. I really thought that was cool, but I just wasn't sure I liked that part. And I will say right now, right up front, the bickering with her and Ransom is going to get really old for me really fast if it continues, Sarah.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I worry that there is this element of, well, the show's called Lower Decks, and these are our main characters, so they got to stay on the lower decks or else we don't have a show. And I see that there's room and potential for a character like Boimler or for Beckett Mariner to move up on the ship and grow as people. And then you can bring in new recruits, and then you have the hilarity of them teaching them the ropes, and there's ways to expand. Like, it is getting old. It's not funny anymore. And it's, I don't know, like, I want her to be awesome. And there was moments where she is, and there's moments where you're like, oh, that's a giant step backwards, right? Like,
And Kasey, I don't know about you, but again, I have to always remember that this is a comedy show and it is animated, but I really can't see a Starfleet commander like Ransom changing the landing party assignments just to prove a point to the person who he's being tasked to tutor or train or whatnot. I can't imagine a commander saying, okay, the 2 engineers that can fix the problem in a half hour and the 2 people that are good at negotiations, we're going to swap just so I can teach Mariner a lesson. And I kind of thought that kind of fell flat and was completely un-Starfleet-like for this particular episode, and it got him in a lot of trouble, and it also could have caused him a lot of problems.
It made
it bothers me. No.
Right? It was like, you have a high up in command person purposely making weak decisions to try and catch somebody being insubordinate when they were going to lose their top 2 engineers being dropped into a volcano. This wasn't a mild transgression. It was like, oh, these 2 are going to get killed. And yeah, this seemed like a very odd writing decision of how far Ransom would go. And I mean, in one way, he was proven right by Mariner being Mariner, but then also, I don't trust his decision-making ability after this at all. Because if there's going to be some other little personal element that comes into where he's trying to prove a point or something, I was just like, no. You're not the guy I want making these decisions now.
Right.
And what's interesting is he admits it to Mariner, but that's still, it's like, hey, I'm sorry. Oh, you got hit by a car yesterday. You don't know who it was. Oh, it was me. I'm sorry. But you're still dealing with being hit by the car.
And you know what? This could all change starting with next week's episode. This may never happen again, but it just was something that kind of hit me the wrong way. So I'm hoping that it doesn't happen continually, because, as I said, this whole thing between Ransom and Mariner is going to get old really quick, Sarah.
Mm-hmm. It didn't. I liked Ransom. I was enjoying the character, and this kind of turned me off. It reminds me too much of working in politics and government in my own job. Like you're almost late for being early. It's like I hear this kind of beep, from people in high positions, and it's very much this like this weird power dynamic that people try to have about proving a point, or look how smart I am, or look how good. Like, you need to trust me, and it's just unattractive.
And I also thought that what happened on the planet was a lot. It wasn't a lost opportunity for Rutherford, but Rutherford had nothing to do in this episode.
Nothing.
I thought it was. I mean, he was just on the planet, and I didn't show my navel. Oh, the way that he talks, I love the way that his voice is. But, I thought that I want to see more Rutherford. We were left at the end of last season with some huge questions about what's going on with his orbital, his eye thing, or I can't remember what the name of it is right now. But so far, other than wearing a Jake couch in episode 1 for a sweater, there really hasn't been much for him, and that's kind of disappointing because he's a great character.
He's a great character, and I'm not sure if the writers have decided what level of his IQ he's going to stay at, because there's this naive certain thing, and then some things that just seem, well, that's stupid to do, but then he's this brilliant engineer. So whenever they came up on the pad, it was like, okay, you're on the planet, and we need a plot device. Okay, it's going to be these 2 characters, because it really could have just been anybody.
Right. I mean, I like seeing Billups. He's a good character. But again, he is an upper decker, I guess we'll call him. Wasted opportunity, I think, with this episode. I understand the need to focus on what's going on with Ransom and Mariner. But I think what they did it was kind of like they just threw them in as an afterthought so that they could wrap up the storyline. That I could be wrong, 100% wrong. Again, I didn't hate the episode. I just didn't love it like I've loved the other ones.
I will give you one great quote that will remind you of just how fun this episode started off. Live out your days not as a warrior, but as a dentist. Ooh, that was funny to me.
I got chills. It was JG right there. I was like, right there. It was awesome.
The Trek Geeks Podcast Network is proud to have Fansets as its presenting sponsor. Their love of Trek can be seen in every single Star Trek pin they produce, and with over 400 pins to select from, and new pins being added every single month, you are sure to find whatever you're looking for to add to your collection. Whether it's one of the amazing deltas from your favorite Trek series, a beloved character, or maybe even a special edition collector set, you know that Fansets pins are made with the finest quality and come with the best customer service in the industry. So head on over to fansets.com today, check out all of their amazing pins from all the different genres they represent. Start by adding a bunch of pins, accessories, or even gift cards to your shopping cart, and at checkout, enter discount code word Discovering Trek for an amazing 10% off your entire order. That's Discovering Trek in all capital letters with no spaces for 10% off your fansets.com purchase. And don't forget, if you're in the United States and spend more than $30, you're also going to get free shipping. Fansets. Our pins have character. And we thank our friends at Fansets for being the presenting sponsor of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network.
Any final thoughts you got, Kasey, on what we saw in this episode?
I think it's an episode that when we only have 10 a season or so, felt like it could have been something a lot more. And when you have limited opportunities and those aren't taken to the fullest extent each time, then it is a lost opportunity of some point. Now, who knows? Later on in the season, something may come back and refer to this episode, and this was a building block. We don't know. But that's what I'm hoping will happen.
Okay. Sarah, how about you?
I've said all I need to say. I'm ready for episode 3.
Yes, I am as well. I mean, like I said, it's always good to watch Lower Decks. It's Star Trek. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to like it.
Yeah.
I just was hoping for more, I think, with episode 2. But needless to say, it has been a fantastic start to season 3 so far. I can't wait to see what's in store next for the crew. Kasey, episode 3 is coming very soon. What are we going to have next week?
Oh, my gosh. Well, next week on a remote science outpost, stone orbs are bringing fantasies to life while Tendi starts her first day as a senior science officer trainee. It's Lower Decks Episode 3, Mining the Mind's Minds. Until then, remember that you can subscribe to Discovering Trek by searching for us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or by downloading the Trek Geeks Podcast Network app.
There's an app for that. I have to say it every time. Don't forget, you can support Discovering Trek and the Trek Geeks Podcast Network by subscribing to bonus content on Patreon. Get access to the unedited audio of all our podcasts and a lot of other perks.
A lot of other perks indeed. Right now, we want to take a moment to recognize the following amazing producers of Discovering Trek. We are so thankful for their support, and they are Mike and Steve Bovia, Chaz Bradshaw, Kyle Castillo, Peter Craig, Andy Davenport, Craig Ewing, Jackie and Chris Hackney, Kimberly Hartman, David Hood, Lionel Marchand, Matt McGonigal, Darren Metcalf, Charlie Mulvey, Sean O'Halloran, Casey Pettit, Jamie Rogers, Major Self, Terry Schull, Jim Stoffel, Chris Trabuzio, Ken Tripp, Christina Werther, and the lovely and extremely talented Jess Vashon. And as always, the senior producer of Trek Geeks is the wonderful and amazing Jude Tatman.
Jude Tatman! If you would like to support Discovering Trek and the Trek Geeks Podcast Network, beam on over to patreon.com/trekgeeks, where subscription levels start at just $2 a month, people.
Just $2? Dang.
$2. I want my $2.
There you go. And hey, everyone, for even more great Star Trek discussion, we want everyone to check out our other member podcasts on the network, including Rewind, Paula Trek's 5-Year Mission, Deep Space Pride, Infinite Trek, The Divine Treasury, The Sci-Fi Sisters, and With the First Link. You can find all of our podcasts, including where to listen, by visiting where? TrekGeeks.com/listen. Once again, TrekGeeks.com/listen. The Trek Geeks Podcast Network. No one, thankfully, talks Trek like we do.
You sounded a little bit like Cyrano there. I'm sure Bill's going to love that.
Yeah.
Everybody, season 3 of Lower Decks continues to amaze. We look forward to the rest of the season, and we hope you're going to join us for each and every episode of Discovering Trek as we break down every adventure of Mariner, Boimler, Tendi, and Rutherford. As always, very special thank you to my amazing co-hosts of the show, Sara and Kasey. As always, I can't do it without you guys. Thank you for all you do. And we actually really, not kidding, we look forward to having Bill join the discussion next week to discuss Season 3, Episode 3, Mining the Mind's Minds. So
Say it 20 times
can't wrap
fast.
my mind around that one. Yeah. So until next time, never stop discovering.
Music for Discovering Trek is provided by 5 Year Mission. They're writing an original song for each episode of Star Trek. Hear more of their music at 5yearmission.net. Discovering Trek is a production of Coconut Media Works. Executive producers Bill Smith and Dan Davidson. For more great Star Trek discussion, discover the other shows of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network at trekgeeks.com or find us in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
Coconut.